Grisly gore-fests, dance routines, and Iron Man doing laundry? Even the best movies shed a scene or two in the cutting room, and these sci-fi classics are no exception. One of the most celebrated science fiction movies of the early 80s, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, may have saved the franchise after the disappointment of the first movie a few years earlier. But it almost included a subplot that could have hurt its critical success. In addition to a well-known deleted scene involving Scotty's nephew, who was killed after Khan's initial attack on the Enterprise, the movie also cut out an entire character, Khan's infant son. In early versions of the movie, the baby is introduced when Chekhov and Captain Terrell are searching Khan's ship, the Botany Bay. The child would later appear with Khan aboard the USS Reliant. In another deleted scene, he dies when Khan accidentally activates the Genesis device. Considering that the studio decided to add a more positive ending late in production, it could be that they felt the death of Scotty's nephew and Khan's infant son seemed a bit grim for a PG-rated sci-fi family film. Images of Khan's son were revealed for the first time in a 1982 issue of Star Blazer magazine, but full footage of the scenes in question have never been released. Basically, all movies end up having a few scenes cut here and there. In the case of Event Horizon, however, there's actually an entirely different cut that has been lost to time. This version of the film reportedly runs over 2 solid hours, as opposed to the 95-minute theatrical release, and includes far more gore. Tragically, the studio didn't feel that the original footage was worth keeping, and much of it has never seen the light of day. Some excised moments include Captain Miller discovering a loose tooth in a corridor, apparently the remains of a former crewman. Most of the deleted moments, however, were extended versions of existing scenes that were far more grisly than the studio or test audiences could handle. A few of these managed to survive, and a canister containing the original film was discovered in an old Transylvania salt mine. They eventually made their way onto a later DVD release in a raw, unfinished form. Not all of the deleted sequences could be restored, though, as the newly discovered film was in poor condition when it was found. Director David Cronenberg made a name for himself as the go-to filmmaker for body horror thanks to early cult classics such as Videodrome and Scanners. In 1985, he was given the task of remaking the 50s B-movie The Fly. With Jeff Goldblum in the title role, Cronenberg crafted one of the most gruesome mainstream science fiction movies ever made.
You look bad. You smell bad.
I've never been much of a bather.
But if it hadn't been cut, one scene in particular would have made the whole film even harder to stomach. The scene in question takes place after Seth Brundle has begun his transformation. Looking for a way to reverse the effects, Brundle thinks he's found the answer and proceeds to test out an experimental procedure on a baboon and a cat. However, the process inadvertently amalgamates the two animals, and Brundle is forced to beat it to death to spare it the agony of its own existence. This moment was actually included in early UK screenings of the film, but moviegoers were so horrified that the studio chose to cut it for wide release. It wasn't until the film's 20th anniversary that it turned up again, this time on a deluxe Blu-ray release. There's no end to the number of great deleted scenes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Most of them have found their way out of the vault in one form or another, and Marvel loves including as many as possible on their home video releases. Nevertheless, for 2008's Iron Man, some deleted scenes will never be released. Not if Kevin Feige has anything to say about it, that is. In an interview with Screen Rant, Marvel executive producer Jeremy Latcham revealed some deleted scenes were deemed so atrocious that they'll never be made public. One of them sees Tony Stark helping prison guard Abu do some chores. Latcham revealed, "Tony is doing laundry for the captors, but he's really breaking the washing machine and stealing parts from it to build the Mark I suit. It's so absurd. It's wild." The scene was apparently so poorly made that studio boss Feige never wants it shown. Latcham continued, "I remember Kevin saying to me in 2012, we can never put out Abu doing laundry. People will know we don't know what we're doing. It'll be embarrassing if they see these scenes." Starship Troopers is a sci-fi action classic from 1997, and in some ways, it's also a romance. The love quadrangle between Rico, Carmen, Xander, and Dizzy makes up a major part of the film, especially in its early stages. Yet, if director Paul Verhoeven had gotten his way, the movie would have had an even greater emphasis on the romantic angle of the story. In the end, much of it wound up deleted from the film after test audiences didn't react well to the subplot. Some of the scenes cut include a moment in which Carmen deflects Rico's sexual advances, as well as a farewell scene where it becomes clear that their relationship is somewhat forbidden. In one later scene, after surviving a deadly attack, Xander tells Carmen that he loves her, helping to reinforce that new relationship in a way the final film never does. The last deleted scene comes right at the end of the film. We'd seen the death of Dizzy and Xander earlier on, and audiences may have wondered what that meant for Johnny and Carmen's relationship. Well, this scene answers that question as the pair share a passionate kiss just before the credits roll. If you're looking for the best movie about a robot cop, well, you're not going to do much better than RoboCop. Die Hard fans consider it the perfect 80s action movie, with not a moment wasted in capturing the excitement of mortally wounded cop Alex Murphy as he's transformed into the heroic cyborg known as RoboCop. As it turned out, finding perfection involved trimming a few moments from the original script, one of which saw the hero cop returning to his own grave. Though it wasn't filmed, this scene was included in both the novelization and the movie's Marvel Comics adaptation. And when it came time for a sequel, RoboCop 2 director Irvin Kershner decided to make it happen. This time, the sequence was intended to be part of an early moment carrying over from the first film's end, when RoboCop embraces his identity as Alex Murphy. Despite all the effort put into making the scene a reality, however, the graveyard visit didn't make it into this movie either. Directed by the legendary Stanley Kubrick, 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of the seminal works in the sci-fi genre. It reshaped science fiction with a mix of thought-provoking drama, nail-biting suspense, and state-of-the-art special effects.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
For years, rumors have claimed that Kubrick trimmed some 20 minutes of footage from 2001, and we finally got confirmation when reels from the film were discovered in, of all places, another salt mine. These scenes aren't exactly the most pivotal, but they do serve to flesh out the finer details of the mission to Jupiter. Some of the footage includes extended sequences of Frank Poole jogging, as well as an alternate version of the iconic opening sequence. One deleted scene sees HAL 9000 ending the radio communication between the Discovery and Poole's pod not long before he's killed, which means a later exchange between Dave and HAL makes a little more sense. Set in the 23rd century, The Fifth Element introduces Mila Jovovich as Lilu, a woman believed by an order of ancient monks to be the key to defeating a cosmic evil. One of The Fifth Element's most intriguing deleted scenes takes place when Dallas is ferrying Lilu and the monk Cornelius to the airport. There, they would have encountered a group of striking alien garbage collectors taking part in a fight with local police. Remnants of the scene can be found in the final cut, as the airport itself is filled with garbage piled meters high that is never adequately explained. The airport attendant only briefly apologizes for the mess. Years later, a behind-the-scenes featurette on the movie's 4K UHD Blu-ray chronicled this lost moment. The last film in the franchise to feature the cast of The Next Generation, the 2002 box office dud Star Trek Nemesis was met with a critical drubbing on its release. Critics claimed the movie was dull, lifeless, and lacking in the charm of the TV series. But quite a few deleted scenes would have gone a long way to keeping what was lost, mostly smaller character moments between the likes of Captain Picard, Commander Riker, and Dr. Crusher. While fans have known about some of these deleted scenes for decades, one recently surfaced that was never included on any home video release. This scene comes after Data's death. Aboard the Enterprise, which remains under repair, we find Worf and Geordi going through their late comrade's quarters. At one point, Data's cat, Spot, leaps into Worf's arms, who reluctantly adopts the feline as his own. Cut from the film's initial DVD release, despite the inclusion of other deleted moments, this scene has since surfaced online in low resolution. The biggest sci-fi movie of the 90s, Independence Day, was a watershed flick that forever changed the summer blockbuster. The movie isn't without its plot holes, however. Many fans have raised questions about the virus created by David Levinson, which he eventually uses to take down the alien mothership.
Welcome to Earth.
Some have wondered how his terrestrial laptop could so easily interface with technology from another world, while others have scratched their heads at how he even knew how to take down their computer system at all. A deleted scene included on the film's 20th anniversary home video release would have answered one of those questions. In this scene, Levinson lays out his plan to crash the alien computer network in more detail while he's given a tour of the captured alien ship by Dr. Brackish Oaken. While Oaken admits they have very little idea as to how the alien technology works, Levinson deduces that a sequential repeating pattern they've discovered is actually a code that they're using to coordinate their ships. It might not be the most airtight explanation, but it offers at least a slightly better explanation as to how Levinson brought down those aliens. Before the likes of Independence Day and Star Wars turned the genre into blockbuster fare, science fiction films were thoughtful, talky dramas, and The Day the Earth Stood Still was one of the very best. In this eerie tale, an alien visitor named Klaatu arrives with a dire message for Earth's leaders, one that he will not reveal until they can all gather together peacefully. Escaping government custody, Klaatu tries to blend in with humanity in order to learn why they are so distrustful of one another. But there's one scene cut from the film that most of the movie's fans have probably never seen. In the film, a detective arrives to take Klaatu to see a local scientist, Professor Barnhart. In the original script, the detective first takes him to the police station for questioning. While there, a local man is brought in seriously injured, and it's revealed that the man was attacked after he was mistaken for Klaatu. Feeling a sense of guilt, but also confusion as to why people would attack a stranger in such a manner, Klaatu begs for the police to take him straight to Barnhart. Though a brief scene, it's one that adds important context to Klaatu's journey, demonstrating both his empathy and humanity's folly. Blade Runner is pretty much a deleted scene bonanza. Over the years, most of the scenes dropped from the original release have found their way into a multitude of different cuts, including the work print cut, the director's cut, and the so-called final cut.
Like tears in rain.
Yet none of these versions include the alternate deleted opening scene. That's because it was never actually filmed. In fact, it was only revealed years after the fact in a series of storyboards first published in Future Noir, The Making of Blade Runner. In the alternate first scene, Detective Rick Deckard is seen landing his spinner on a desolate road. He exits the flying car and enters an empty home, where he notices that there is still a pot of soup boiling on the stove. As he listlessly stirs the soup, a large hulking man walks in, and Deckard immediately shoots him dead. He then rips out a piece of his jaw, revealing the man to be a replicant, and takes off in his spinner. If all of this sounds familiar, it should. That's because this original opening was used as the intro to the sequel, Blade Runner 2049, which was released nearly 40 years later. Featuring some of the most jaw-dropping action sequences in movie history, Jurassic Park is a true blockbuster adventure in every way. Steven Spielberg's classic left indelible images etched into the minds of countless moviegoers, whether it's the first sight of the brontosauruses or the clicking talons of the velociraptor on that cold kitchen floor. No matter how many memorable moments the movie boasts, however, there are still more that didn't make it into the film. One deleted action sequence would have seen Alan Grant, Tim, and Lex stumble upon a sleeping Tyrannosaurus Rex while roaming the jungle. After sneaking past the beast without drawing its attention, they make their way to a nearby structure where they are able to grab an inflatable raft from storage. They take off down the river, but just when the trio thinks they're in the clear, the T-Rex bursts out from behind the trees and tears after them. It doesn't seem as if this sequence was ever filmed, sadly, and today it exists only in storyboard form.
We got one!
A supernatural comedy with a pair of former SNL stars leading the way, Ghostbusters defied the odds to become a pop culture icon. The movie quickly inspired a die-hard group of fans who, for decades, only had a pair of films to pore over. So you can imagine the excitement when, in 2017, new footage from the original movie was discovered, including some hilarious deleted scenes. Found in the personal collection of director Ivan Reitman, the reel's discovery caused quite a stir among Ghostbusters fans. One of these scenes was Fort Detmering, a long-known but never-seen moment in which Ray Stantz has a sexual encounter with a ghost. In the final film, remnants of the scene are shown in a montage, but the full sequence has never been revealed. It opens with the Ecto-1 arriving at the fort and the team exploring the grounds. Ray puts on an old naval uniform he finds and lays down in a bed before the ghost of a beautiful woman enters the room. Following a brief unseen sex act that somehow did manage to make it into the final movie, Winston is seen knocking on the door to the room, wondering what's going on. Given the fact that the most risque portion of the scene actually wound up in the theatrical cut, it's likely that the full extended scene was simply cut for time. The culmination of a decade of stories, Avengers: Infinity War brought together just about every character in the MCU to battle Thanos, the big bad who wanted to erase half of all life in the universe. With such a broad, sweeping story to tell, Infinity War had a lot to pack in, and some reviewers inevitably felt it was a little long and overstuffed. But it could have been worse. According to Thanos' creator Jim Starlin, the original plan was actually to open the movie with an additional 45-minute action sequence. Instead of beginning with an attack on Thor's ship, Infinity War would have begun with Thanos' assault on the planet Xandar. He would have decimated the entire planet in his search for the Power Stone, which is held under protection by the Nova Corps. In an interview with Collider, Starlin explained, "There was a whole sequence of him getting the first gem, and they had to cut that out. They shot it, but they never wanted to spend the money on the effects, and they didn't want the movie to be as long as the second one was." Starlin seems to feel that the filmmakers may have regretted their decision. He added, "They didn't realize it was going to be quite the hit it was." Another 80s icon, Back to the Future sends Michael J. Fox's Marty McFly hurtling back to the 50s. Marty soon discovers that his father is a total dweeb, and when his mother falls in love with him, he's forced to help his dad get the girl to save his own existence. The film hammers home what a loser George is by showing him being bullied by tough guy Biff, but one deleted scene makes George look even worse. During the Enchantment Under the Sea dance at the climax of the movie, George is preparing to go through with his plan to rescue Lorraine from a staged encounter with Marty. Nervous about acting at the right moment, he seeks out a phone booth and calls the operator to get the time, only to be locked inside by Mark, the red-headed class clown who later cuts into his dance with Lorraine. With a prop trident holding the door closed, George is then discovered by Principal Strickland, who scolds him for being a slacker, but doesn't let him out. Likely cut for time or pacing reasons, this sequence actually explains why George didn't make it to the car in time to stop Marty. Most films these days include plenty of deleted scenes once they make their way to home video. Fans love to go over the various bits of the movie they never got to see, but they're typically superfluous moments, and it's usually easy to understand why they were removed. Sometimes, though, there's a scene that leaves you wondering why it wasn't in the movie, and that's the case with a deleted scene from Rian Johnson's 2012 sci-fi action movie, Looper. The film stars Bruce Willis as Joe, an aging hitman who uses time travel to dispose of his targets. When he's due for retirement and his superior sent him back in time to be killed by his younger self, old Joe manages to escape. At one point, young Joe hides out at a house belonging to a woman named Sarah, and soon after he arrives, a mafia thug shows up looking for him. After a tense, drawn-out search of the house, Sarah gives the goon a tour of the basement where Joe is hiding, and we're sure it's going to lead to a showdown. The suspense is palpable as the mobster stalks the room, only for us to realize that Joe is hiding beneath the floor where he is able to escape notice. The choice to leave out this incredibly tense scene is a real head-scratcher. Following Star Trek Nemesis, the Star Trek franchise took a hiatus from the big screen, but it came roaring back with a new look in J.J. Abrams' 2009 reboot. The sequel to that movie, Star Trek Into Darkness, centered once again on Khan, this time played by Sherlock star Benedict Cumberbatch, who was an even more ruthless and cunning version of the villain than that seen in Wrath of Khan. This time around, he is revealed to have been manipulated by a secret Black Ops division of Starfleet called Section 31, led by Admiral Marcus. While the final film doesn't reveal the truth about who is manipulating him until later, an early deleted scene almost gives it away. This moment comes in the form of a video communication to Marcus from Thomas Harewood, who is about to detonate a bomb in London at Khan's behest. The scene shows Marcus receiving the transmission in his office, with Harewood informing him that the impending destruction will be a message from Khan. Ultimately, though, producers cut the scene because it revealed a little too much about the players involved. In the film's commentary, editor Mary Jo Markey said, "We felt that it was very important not to introduce the Admiral in any way or tip our hand about who he would become later on in the film. We realized to hold him back for a long time would be more shocking." The MCU is littered with juicy deleted scenes, but few are as jaw-dropping as one moment cut from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The film sees Stephen Strange face off against Wanda Maximoff, who is turned twisted and vengeful after losing Vision and her children. Determined to find an alternate reality where she and her family can live in peace, Wanda traverses the multiverse itself and basically slaughters everyone in her path. Multiverse of Madness has Wanda taking the proverbial axe to the likes of Mr. Fantastic, Professor Charles Xavier, and Black Bolt, but a deleted scene further shows just how vicious she has really become. Not long after the movie's release, one of the film's artists, Jimmy Simser, released storyboards depicting the moment when Scarlet Witch arrives at Camartage to get her hands on America Chavez. In this unseen version, though, Wanda isn't alone, as she brings with her the decapitated head of Baron Mordo. 1989's Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is a weird and wild story that sees the two friends enlist famous faces from history to help them get a passing grade in school to save the future. Over the years, a number of deleted scenes from the movie have cropped up here and there, and in 2020, one of the film's stars dug into the vault to reveal yet another.
Excellent!
Posting on X, formerly known as Twitter, Alex Winter showed off images of a sequence early in the film in which Bill and Ted make their way home from school. The sequence would have included a bizarre musical number that fans ultimately never got to see. Winter told Rolling Stone, "The opening was an almost surreal rock number where Keanu and I are at a bus stop waiting for the school bus in the morning, and we start to air guitar and rock out, and it turned into a whole dance routine. Then it ends up with us kind of getting into a skirmish with the school jocks, and you meet our characters that way. All of that stuff was shot, and none of it made it into the film. A box office juggernaut, E.T. the Extraterrestrial was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. It won Best Original Score and 3 additional technical awards. The story of a strange alien visitor who was befriended by a pair of young children named Elliot and Gertie, E.T. remains one of the most beloved family movies of all time. Yet, a few deleted scenes that have shown up over the years might have totally changed the tone of the film. In addition to a comedic moment that didn't make the cut because the E.T. puppet just wasn't convincing enough, there's one other scene that seems awfully out of place in a movie aimed at kids and families. Popping up decades later thanks to some behind-the-scenes stills, it shows Elliot's mother Mary lying face down but topless, asleep in bed late at night. As she slumbers, the alien creeps into her bedroom and silently observes her. Though probably intended to show E.T. learning about humans, the images give off a very unsettling vibe, one that might well have disturbed the families in the audience.